I am not a gold medal winning Olympic athlete, nor am I a groundbreaking, discovery-making scientist. I'm also not a Fortune 500 business billionaire. Well, at least, not yet. I'm just a very passionate guy with an extraordinary story. And I'd like to tell you my story. My story begins when I was a small boy. I was a dreamer. I was with my head up high in the clouds, not connected with my feet to the ground, and I liked it there. I liked to dream. I'd like to look at the impossible and dream in a fantasy world. And I liked it there until that one day in September of 1989. At that time, my doctor told me, Robert, you have type 1 diabetes. This is incurable, and this means taking insulin shots, living a life of regularity, consistency, and above everything, back to reality. So over the course of the next few years, I learned, or I had to face, this reality. I grew into my teenage years and on high school like everybody else. I was a rebel, going against the grain and going my own way. But even high school didn't make it for me. I dropped out of high school and I started working. And by the time I was nearly 21, I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilled with my life and I had no idea what to do. On a Friday evening, I went with some friends to a party. I had a drink or two, and I went back home. And on the Saturday morning that I woke up, I will never forget that day. In 2002, on August 16th, I opened up my eyes that morning, and my world was black. By the time I realized what was happened, panic struck, and like a zombie, I walked around trying to find my way around the house that I was living in for over 22 years. And I found the refrigerator, which at that point was my lifesaver. And I made it through the Saturday. I couldn't find the phone, so I had to make it through the Saturday and the Sunday. And on Monday, I finally found that phone, that life-important phone. And I called the hospital. And by the time I was able to explain, they told me, come by. I asked a friend to drop me to the hospital. And there they gave me the explanation. Well, Robert, you have proliferative diabetic retinopathy. I said, well, I'm a smart guy, but I have no clue what that means. And basically what they said is a very thin layer in the back of your eye, detached from your eye, like a very thin layer. And this is the reason why you don't see. This is the reason why your world is black. So what is there to do, I asked. And they said, we can operate you. And because I didn't finish my high school, I wasn't secure about myself, I followed them. And over the course of 2 years, they did intensive procedures and operations on me. And slowly but surely, I gained my eyesight back. I could see a little bit more. But every operation and every procedure that I got, I saw a little bit less. And so it was very hard for me to live the life that I wanted, let alone understand the life that I wanted to live. And so at one point, after these 2 years, I hit rock bottom. I became depressed. I made up the bill. And the bill for me was, I have no job, which means I have no income. I have no good health. I have no relationship, no money. I have no eyesight, so I have no future. What to do? By the time I realized what to do, I got to hear a quote by a friend of mine. And he told me the following. He said, people most change when the pain of remaining in the same situation becomes greater than the fear of changing itself. And for me, that was absolutely true. I had to change because being depressed, that was horrible. Having no eyesight, that was even worse. So, what to do? And by accident or coincidence, if you believe in that, I stumbled upon a course on personal development. And I followed that course. It actually made me feel a little bit better. So I thought, okay, let's go to the next one. And the next one. And over the course of 2 years and some months, I went into several personal development courses and trainings. I got my bachelor's and my master's in a science called neuro-linguistic programming. And I learned how to deal with the lack of eyesight. I learned to overcome my depression. And I started to learn how to envision my life again. So, what is there to do? I thought. Even though I don't have a high school diploma, I still wanted to go further. I still wanted to study. I still wanted to explore the impossible. And so I did a study. I did a study called Human Resources Management. And I thought, this is nice, because for me, it allows me to do the human part, but also the business part. And it allows me to explore what is there for me within my potential. And I did that course in 4 years. From 2005 to 2009, it went great. I got a lot of support from all the people that were willing to help me out and to give me a chance to discover my potential, to awaken the possibilities, and to see how much further I could stretch my comfort zone. This was very nice, and I loved it. But there was one problem. Even though I was lacking the eyesight, the core cause of it all, my diabetes, was still there. And so, at one point, my doctor told me, Robert, also your kidneys are failing. And within a few months, you will have to face kidney dialysis. And for me, understanding what that meant, being stuck on a machine 3 times a week for 4 hours every time, it meant lack of freedom. And I learned throughout the past years before the following formula. And this formula I hold still true today. Now you may wonder, what does this mean? E plus R equals O? Well, let me tell you. It stands for the events plus your response to it equals your outcome. Even though I was facing kidney dialysis, I still wanted to investigate, explore, and experience what is there for me to do. I knew it was inevitable. I knew I had to face it at one time. But there was still a little bit of time, just a few months. And having the lack of freedom, which I connected to kidney dialysis, I chose to do the opposite and to live the ultimate freedom. And for me, the ultimate freedom was walking a pilgrimage called Santiago de Compostela. And for those of you who know, Santiago is a pilgrimage of 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers, and it's heavy. I didn't practice because I didn't have the time. So I took my backpack, 25 kilos, stuffed it with everything and nothing of importance, even my laptop. And I just started walking from the southern part of France up to the Mount Pyrenees, over the Pyrenees, into Spain. And on the first day, I remember it very well, I just walked 1% of this 800-kilometer, at that point, journey. And I thought, if this is going to last for another 99%, I will be sure that I will not make it. But I asked myself a critical question. Why am I doing this? What is my motivation for walking this pilgrimage. And I connected it to this feeling of freedom, this ultimate freedom that I wanted to live. And so it gave me the motivation, it gave me the power to face this impossible journey. And over the following 6 weeks, I walked that 600-mile or 1,000-kilometer pilgrimage. And along its way, I wrote a book about it. Upon coming home, I had to face this kidney dialysis. But something within me changed. And what changed was the following, that even though circumstances may seem to determine your outcome, it's your belief that is most important. So whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you're always right. And so I faced kidney dialysis. In that same year of 2010, when I was dealing with kidney dialysis, I started my own company. I graduated from 2 studies, among which one university study. I wrote and published my book, just to name a couple of examples of reaching the goals that I wanted to have. And I knew that there's much more within me. I wanted to set a new goal. And this goal was even more impossible, even bigger than the previous one. So in 2010, while I was still on kidney dialysis, I thought, what is also impossible for me to do? And I figured it. Let's run a marathon. And not just some marathon, no, let's run the marathon. New York. So I practiced. But unfortunately, in that same year, I was too late in subscribing. This was my attempt number 1. 2 years later, I wanted to do it again. In 2012, I practiced a lot, and I really went for it. With all the passion and all the motivation and all the enthusiasm and the belief that I could do it, I wanted to make it happen. Until I got a phone call from my doctor again. And my doctor this time called me up and he said, "Well, Robert, how are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing great. I'm feeling wonderful, even though kidney dialysis, even though diabetes, even though the lack of eyesight, I'm doing great." And he said, "Wonderful. Now how would you like to have 2 new organs?" And I thought, wow, I didn't see that one coming. And for a short time, I made up the balance. Marathon, double organ transplant, marathon. And of course I made the wisest decision. I went for the double organ transplant. And I can tell you, it was heavy. It was very heavy. It took me over a year to recuperate. But I always kept that formula in the back of my head. The event does not determine your outcome. It's always how you respond to that event. So in 2013, I recuperated. And I slowly but surely started to practice and train a little bit more. And with the belief that I could do it, I planned my journey to do the marathon. When 2014 came, this was my 3rd attempt now, I thought to myself, okay, now it has to be done. Now I have to surely make it. And so I subscribed. I got in, I got accepted. And on the coldest day ever recorded in that year in New York, with a temperature that felt like -5, and an Arctic wind breezing down my spine, I ran that marathon. And I finished it. And when I finished it, even though there were only 2 thoughts running through my head, 1, I want something warm. 2, I just want to have a bed. There was a 3rd thought running through my head, and that is, yes, I did it. You can do anything that you put your mind into. I'll leave you with a last quote. And before I do that, I just want to say that even though my eyesight is getting dimmer, my vision upon life has never been greater. So envisioning the impossible and awakening the possibilities, it allows you to do anything. And in my opinion, one of the most famous and greatest boxers of all time, once said, "Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who rather live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it." Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. And above all, impossible, it's nothing. So whether you want to be a gold medal winning Olympic athlete, a groundbreaking, discovery-making scientist, or a Fortune 500 business billionaire, or anything else in your life, you hold the power within that to determine your own reality, to envision the impossible, and to make it come true. Thank you very much.